Imagine being stuck in a pitch-black underwater cave, exhausted, and with your air running low. That's exactly what happened to Martin Farr. But this journey, which was meant to explore the boundaries of their knowledge, ended tragically for his partner. But what exactly happened during this tragic dive? How did the temptation of adventure lead to such a terrible outcome? Welcome to Disastrology, and this is the Agen Allwedd diving tragedy. Agen Allwedd, or Agen Allwedd Cave, is one of the longest cave systems in the UK, stretching 20.2 miles. When you enter Agen Allwedd, your adventure begins with a short series of passages at the entrance, leading you to the first boulder choke, which is a sort of natural barrier formed by fallen rocks. As you delve deeper, you'll encounter various round passages that twist and turn, each offering a unique path to discover. Initially, you'll need to crawl through the cave's long entrance passageways, but once you're past this part, the larger passages open up and you can navigate them more easily, even without special diving gear. Within Agen Allwedd, there are several round trips or circular routes that adventurous explorers can take. One notable journey is the Grand Circle, located along the main passageway. This route challenges explorers with 4 sections blocked by large rocks that add an extra element of adventure and difficulty. Another notable round passage is the Southern Stream Passage, which stretches long, stays damp, and can be quite exhausting to navigate. Within the cave, there are also outer and inner circles waiting to be explored, each offering its own unique challenges and discoveries. In the early days of UK caving exploration, many water-filled caves remained unexplored and unmapped, drawing in young adventurers like Martin Farr. Martin, a legend in the caving and cave diving community, started exploring caves at just 10 years old. Inspired by past diving adventures led by John Parker, he began his exploration of Agen Allwedd in 1973. The following year, he partnered with Roger Solari for what would become one of the longest cave explorations of that time. Now, Roger shared a similar passion for caving. Roger's journey into cave diving began at a remarkably young age of 12 in his homeland, the Forest of Dean. His deep familiarity with this forest grew through continuous exploration, uncovering its geological secrets and hidden caves. His academic pursuits focused on the Forest Master System, aiming to document and study the diverse caves and mines within this region. Martin and Roger met during Roger's first year at university. They quickly became close friends and reliable caving partners. Roger was known for his patience, often waiting for hours for others to get ready, while Martin, smaller and faster, loved to explore risky sections of caves. Now, access to the submerged passages in Agen Allwedd Cave was often restricted due to their extreme danger. During 1971 and 1972, John Parker led notable diving explorations in this cave. However, he found himself burnt out from the constant solo dives and noticed he was making mistakes that could have been fatal. Realizing he needed a break, John decided to leave these dangerous explorations to someone else, someone eager to prove themselves, like Martin Farr. Their goal was to go beyond where John Parker had stopped. But in May, Roger injured his knee during a caving trip, making him unable to handle the physical demands of the expedition. He knew that attempting the journey with his injury could risk both their lives. The plan was for Martin to conduct the initial exploration alone, assessing the challenges and gathering information, especially about the water-filled passages. If the conditions were somewhat safe and Roger's knee healed, they would later explore deeper together. In mid-1974, Martin entered Agen Allwedd Cave alone, equipped with 3 diving air tanks for extra safety. He went beyond the previously explored section set by John Parker and Jeff Phillips, which was around 1,476 feet of passageway in 1972, bringing the total new length to 1,969 feet. In his solo adventure, Martin discovered a vast, unexplored passage and felt a rush of adrenaline. Eager to continue, he went another 100 feet further. To navigate the tight sections ahead, Martin removed his diving equipment, placing it on a gravel bank. This allowed him to fit through the narrow passages, contrasting with the wide-open areas where he could move more freely. As he explored, he encountered intricate rifts and deep, water-filled sections, posing significant challenges. Martin's heart pounded as he navigated a particularly tight passage, feeling rocks scratch his back and sides. He could barely move his arms or head, wiggling forward through the claustrophobic space. After going on for about 1,500 feet in total, he noticed the cave ceiling descending, indicating the presence of another water-filled passage. This was the spot he had hoped to find, but he needed his equipment to continue. The discovery of this new passage was a major achievement. Martin knew he had found something significant and felt a great sense of accomplishment. By this time, Roger's knee had healed, allowing him to join Martin, and on Saturday, June 15, 1974, Roger entered the Agen Allwedd cave with Martin. Martin and Roger knew this next part of their journey would be intense. They had to navigate through the first water-filled passages, which they managed without any issues. Martin led Roger to the exact spot where he had turned back previously. When they reached the fourth submerged passage, their excitement started to mix with anxiety. They were in uncharted territory, and the adrenaline rush was quickly wearing off. The unknown dangers of this area were sinking in, but giving up wasn't an option. Determined to keep going, they pressed deeper into the claustrophobic fourth passage. The twists and turns made it even more challenging. For the first time in their caving adventures, Martin and Roger decided to dive side by side. This decision went against typical cave diving practices, where divers usually go one after the other to avoid complications. But in this risky environment, they needed to be able to support each other immediately if something went wrong. As they moved through the fourth passage, the narrow spaces and sharp turns tested their skills and nerves. Every twist felt tighter, and the rocks seemed to close in on them. But Martin and Roger stayed focused, supporting each other every step of the way. Their shared experience and trust in each other were vital. Despite the fear and anxiety, they knew that together they could overcome the obstacles. Martin and Roger knew they had to be strategic as they approached the water-filled section of the cave. Feeling a bit hesitant, they made a unique decision. They left their caving boots behind on a mud bank at the entrance to the submerged passage. This unusual choice seemed best given the conditions they faced. Roger went in first, laying down a guideline reel. Martin followed about 5 meters behind, equipped with an additional 1,000 feet of line, anticipating a long and challenging dive. This setup was critical for navigation and safety. The guideline would be their only way out. Shortly into the dive, Roger began experiencing sinus issues, a problem he occasionally faced, especially at increased depths. Although Martin was aware of this recurring issue and signaled to suggest they turn back and reassess, Roger's determination to find the unexplored passage drove him to push forward. Roger's line extended to 400 feet into the passage, and it became clear to Martin that they were descending to significant depths, about 50 feet below the surface, with the passage continuing to slope downward. Despite the sinus discomfort, Roger was focused on the goal, and Martin trusted his friend's judgment and determination. Their dive became more intense as they went deeper into the cave. The environment was creepy and constricting, and the water was cold and murky. The pressure and darkness added to the psychological challenge, but the guideline gave them a lifeline, a way to navigate back if needed. As they progressed, Martin kept a close eye on Roger, ready to help if the sinus issues worsened. The deepening passage meant that every movement needed careful consideration. The slope made the dive more difficult, and both cavers felt the physical and mental toll. However, their preparation and experience helped them push forward. They knew that turning back now would mean losing precious ground in their exploration. The unexplored passage lay ahead, and despite the risks, they were determined to see what lay beyond. Roger's determination and Martin's support were crucial if they had to go further. They balanced their fears with the thrill of discovery, each twist and turn to bring them closer to their goal. Martin checked his pressure gauge and realized he was nearing the critical limit of his air supply, signaling it was time to head back. He knew Roger's air supply was even lower because Roger had to use smaller cylinders to fit through the tight passages due to his larger build. Despite this, Martin communicated underwater to Roger that he would continue exploring and suggested Roger turn back. Assuming Roger followed his advice, Martin pushed forward. The passage kept descending, and 150 feet later, Martin found himself beyond his third air limit. He knew he should have already been on his way back. Ascending a steep gravel bank, he saw that his pressure gauge confirmed he was deep into the reserve of his third air supply. Despite the danger, Martin felt a strong urge to keep going. He quickly climbed the gravel slope, hoping to find an air pocket where he could rest and regroup. As he ascended, he grew more desperate to find air. Just 3 feet below the water surface, he still couldn't find any. Panic set in as his breathing became uncontrollable and his vision blurred. He felt trapped. In a bold and risky move, Martin turned right. gambling that this new direction might lead him to an air pocket. It was his only hope to avoid drowning in the passage. The unfamiliar passage was risky, but staying put was not an option. His panic and desperation drove him to keep moving, searching for any sign of air. His quick thinking and willingness to take a gamble were his only chances to make it out alive. As he moved through the unexplored passage, every breath counted, and the need for air became more urgent with each passing moment. Having navigated deeper into the uncharted submerged passage, Martin found himself in a dangerous situation. After venturing further into an opening, the passage suddenly narrowed, signaling the end of the navigable route. At this point, Martin realized he was nearly out of air, increasing the urgency of his situation. The stress and strain of the dive were mounting exponentially. As Martin attempted to retreat, he encountered Roger positioned above him near the cave ceiling at a depth of approximately 3 feet, just near the top. The unexpected meeting required immediate underwater communication and decision-making. Martin indicated to Roger the urgent need to get out of the cave. Prioritizing their escape, Martin left the dive reel and followed Roger's lead. Both divers faced critically low air supplies, having reached the deepest point of their journey at approximately 70 feet. This depth intensified the psychological challenges they faced. As Martin ascended through the passage, he experienced acute ear pain and a severe headache, symptoms often associated with rapid changes in pressure and the physical exertion of cave diving. As he paused to clear his ears, he waited for Roger, but Roger didn't show up. The realization that he could not afford to search for Roger if he had lagged behind forced Martin to continue his ascent out of the cave alone. Upon surfacing, Martin experienced an overwhelming sense of relief, having reached an air surface. However, this relief was quickly overshadowed by the onset of an intense headache, a potential indicator of decompression sickness. The severity of the headache left him in a state of agony. Standing in the cave pool, Martin found himself in a state of shock and realization, particularly about the absence of his diving partner, Roger. Martin's immediate response was to wait by the passage entrance, a decision they had agreed upon before entering the cave. The full gravity of the situation slowly dawned on Martin as he stood there, grappling with the intense pain and the fear for Roger's safety. The bond of trust and the shared experiences they had in their numerous adventures reminded Martin that waiting was the only option, holding on to the hope that Roger would emerge safely from the depths. Martin's period of waiting was filled with intense anxiety and contemplation as he grappled with the potential outcomes of the dive and the fate of his partner. While waiting, he closely observed the water's surface for any indication of Roger's return, such as a twitch on the guideline or any sign of movement. However, the water remained still, with only a tiny blob of foam idly circulating in the pool, increasing the sense of uncertainty and concern. After approximately an hour, Martin realized the futility of passive waiting and decided to take action despite the risks involved. Acknowledging his depleted air supply, he decided to conduct a limited reconnaissance of the first 100 feet of the submerged passage. This decision was made in the hope of locating Roger or gaining some insight into his situation. Martin carefully prepared for this secondary dive, going for a single air cylinder left before they originally entered the cave. He chose one with a few atmospheres of air still inside, a dangerous decision because he needed this air to get back through the water-filled sections to exit the cave. By searching for Roger, he risked running out of air and potentially not having enough to get out himself, thus risking his life. Entering the water, Martin began to methodically pull on the guideline, ensuring that it was tight to avoid entanglement, a critical safety measure in cave diving. During this process, he noticed the line was loose, indicating a lack of tension that could suggest various scenarios, including the possibility of Roger having already passed this point, or an issue with the line itself. Martin continued to cautiously pull the line, seeking to establish a tight connection and proceed with his rescue effort of Roger. However, as he began to pull the line, he immediately noticed an anomaly. The line was coming in too effortlessly. This ease of retrieval led Martin to an alarming realization: the line was no longer anchored or attached to anything. Such a situation is highly unusual in cave diving, where guidelines are meticulously secured to prevent disorientation and to aid in navigation during both entry and departure from the cave. Recognizing the severity of this discovery, Martin continued to retrieve the line, pulling it in steadily. Then, a shocking discovery was made. The line had been clearly severed, indicative of a deliberate cut, most likely made with a knife. This finding led Martin to a distressing conclusion regarding Roger. It seemed probable that Roger, during his attempt to exit the submerged passage, had become entangled in the line and, in a desperate attempt to free himself, had no choice but to cut it. This act, while necessary for immediate escape, likely resulted in Roger losing his orientation within the passage, or, worse, exhausting his remaining air supply. Martin's heart sank as he faced the stark reality of the situation. The severed line was a grim indication of the challenges Roger faced, and the uncertainty of his partner's fate weighed heavily on him. Despite the dire circumstances, Martin knew he had to remain calm and focus on his own survival, hoping against hope that Roger had found a way to make it out alive. Martin understood that any further solo efforts to locate Roger would be futile and potentially hazardous. With a heavy heart and a clear understanding of the limited options, Martin began his careful and somber exit from the cave. Despite just barely having enough air to navigate through the other 3 passages, he managed to make it out safely and immediately called for help. When John Elliott and his friends returned from their own 9-hour dive nearby that night, they found Martin, who informed them that Roger was still missing in the 4th sump. The group immediately contacted the police and the cave rescue team. Among those called was John Parker, one of the best divers available for such a critical situation. Despite their best efforts, the initial rescue attempt on Sunday evening was hindered by poor visibility due to heavy rainfall in South Wales. They spent the entire night searching, but had to suspend their efforts when they couldn't find Roger. The search resumed a few days later on Thursday, with a team of 10 divers, including John Elliott, John Parker, and Colin Edmund, a local diver. They aimed to reach the terminal sump where Roger was last seen. John Parker and Colin Edmund ventured into the cave while the others waited at the surface. Colin returned after reaching the 3rd sump, reporting that visibility remained poor. Parker, determined to find Roger, continued the search alone, equipped with 4 air cylinders. He reached the 4th sump and laid more than 500 feet of line, yet the poor visibility thwarted his efforts. After about 3.5 hours, Parker also returned to the surface, having found no trace of Roger. The team held a brief meeting and concluded that the search should be called off to avoid further risks. They had spent 10.5 hours in a fruitless search for their friend and fellow diver. Sadly, Roger Solari's body was never retrieved, leaving his fate a mystery to the cave diving community. Roger's absence was deeply felt by his diving companions and the wider cave diving community in South Wales, Yorkshire, and Ireland, where he had left a lasting impression with his cheerful spirit and unwavering determination. Roger Solari's legacy continues to inspire and remind us of the courage and risks involved in the pursuit of exploration. What do you think could have happened to Roger in Agen Allwedd Cave? And have you ever been cave diving or explored underground environments? Leave your answers in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.